Kaylene Marie Oehling was a 20-year-old from Etna, Pennsylvania. She was a tomboy who liked working on cars with her dad. In the early morning hours of January 10th, 2020, Kaylene walked away from her friend's house to meet a much older man who had been in a relationship with her. She was never seen again. I'm Ed Dentzel, and this is Unfound. Have you ever watched wildlife videos? No, I don't mean the nice ones, the kind with the meerkats running around doing funny stuff, or the dodo videos that always appear as quote-unquote recommended in my Facebook feed. I mean the ones that maybe turn your stomach. The gazelle running across the savannah as a family of leopards pursue. The baby elephant surrounded by a pack of hyenas. The alligator swimming up on a water buffalo that doesn't see it coming. I got to admit, I'm a softie. I never find myself rooting for the predators. Maybe you're the same way. Even though we know that to survive, these animals must kill other animals. These predators are not evil. They're just doing what they have to do. Whereas in the human world, although we are also animals, we view people predators totally differently. We do see them as evil. Why? Because we know they know better. But they commit these horrible acts anyway. They do what they do not to survive, but for control and many times for fun. Well, in the disappearance of Kaylene Oehling, she became the focus of a much older man, and in fact got pregnant by him, and he admits seeing her that early morning. Then Kaylene was gone, and we're left to figure out if it was due to the guy preying on. And now a summary of the case. Kaylene was one of many girls in the Oehling family, but she was the unique one. Kaylene loved to hang out with her dad, often doing work with him. She was also the most outspoken. And to hear her father tell it, Kaylene loved to be loved. In the teenage years, though, she had problems in school. Not because Kaylene wasn't intelligent, in fact, she was, but because books just weren't her thing. So Kaylene dropped out when she turned 18. After this, through a friend, Kaylene became involved with Michael Manno, a felon over twice her age. And it is believed that before Kaylene went missing, that she was pregnant with Michael's child. So, in the early morning hours of January 10th, 2020, Kaylene was with friends hanging out in Etna, just a few doors down from where her mother lived. During the previous hours, Kaylene had exchanged several messages with Michael Manno. Then, at approximately 1:15 a.m., she walked away from the house, saying she was going to meet him down the street to get some jewelry back he had stolen from Kaylene's family. The friends did not anticipate Kaylene coming back. They believed she would be dropped off at her mother's. Yet, after Kaylene left, she never arrived at her mother's. She was never seen again. In a subsequent interview by police, Michael Manno claimed that Kaylene was fine and that she was with a guy named Marcus, a person with no last name and no location. In 2018, Unfound worked with Pittsburgh's Tribune-Review to give coverage to disappearances in that area that have been forgotten. And in fact, in at least two of them, we certainly moved the investigations forward. Kaylene's disappearance happened after Unfound's relationship with the newspaper ended, but we will still give it our best shot to assist her family. And that starts with these 3 questions. Number 1, why would Kaylene meet Michael Manno after making an accusatory post about him on Facebook? Number 2, why has Michael Manno not told a consistent story concerning Kaylene's disappearance, despite admitting he met her that night? And number 3, is it possible that more than one person is fully aware of what happened to Kaylene Oehling? Kaylene's family believes, without a doubt, that Michael Manno knows what happened on the morning of January 10th, 2020. The guest for this episode is Kaylene's father, Jason Oling. Unfound News. I hope you all got to listen to the special episode from this past Monday concerning Jason Landry. I'm also wondering what you thought about the theory I put forward in the summation. Yes, it was a bit novel, but I think the analogy I made is sound and the logical progression from it compelling. Next, this Monday, February 22nd, you will get to see me and Dr. Grace Telesco together again at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Fischler College of Education and School of Criminal Justice YouTube channel. We will be discussing the disappearance of Joshua Guimond from St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota, who disappeared on November 9th, 2002. We will be covering everything, including the sexual abuse allegations attached to that school at the time. Finally, also on February 22nd, but at 8:45 p.m. Eastern, my assistant Eric Grabowski will be conducting the next episode of Unfound on the Ground for premium Patreon members. This will happen on Zoom as usual. If you would like to take part, please become a supporter at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast and sign up at the $12 a month level or higher, where you can find Unfound. Unfound supports accounts on Podomatic, iTunes, Stitcher, Instagram, Twitter, Spotify, Deezer, Facebook, and YouTube. Speaking of YouTube, on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, please join us on our podcast channel for the Unfound Live Show. All of you can talk with me, and I can answer your questions. Contribute to Unfound at patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. This week, I need to thank Michael and Jana. You can also contribute at PayPal, paypal.me/Unfound Podcast. And do not forget the website, theunfoundpodcast.com. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the father of Kaylene Oehling, Jason Oling. Jason, welcome to Unfound.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. The listeners know that I am from the western Pennsylvania area, so covering any disappearance from that area is always very extra special to me, and we're going to be talking about some locations that I know very, very well from when I lived in Pennsylvania back to the 1990s. So it's a real pleasure having you on the program to try to help you out finding your daughter, Kaylene, Jason. So thank you for appearing. Let's start here. Let's just talk about your family in general, as we usually do. How many children do you have? Kaylene is, I don't know, one of a few. I don't even know if we've talked about your other children specifically, but how many children do you have and their ages? And tell us a little bit about the Oehling house.
Okay, myself, I have 3 other children. I am remarried. I don't have any children with Robin. Mm-hmm. My daughter, Michaela, she's 22 going on 23. Mm-hmm. Then there is Kaylene. She would be 21 right now.
Okay.
I have Faith. She is 17. And I have Elena, which is 9. Kaylene's mother, Tiffany, she has 3 other children also. I'm not too sure of the ages, but they're all younger. They're like basically like 11 and under. She has Michael, Cadence, and Shane.
Wow. Okay. But you yourself, I guess, with your ex-wife, you had 4 girls?
I have 4.
Yeah,
myself.
you and your ex-wife had 4 girls together.
Yeah, we were actually never married.
Oh, okay.
And actually, my other 2 children are from somebody else.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a lot. I guess the point I'm making, Jason, is that's a lot of girls. How was that?
To tell you the truth, a lot of fathers, of course, they would say, "Oh, they want the boy and everything else," and I wouldn't have it any other way. Growing up, my tomboy, that was actually Kaylene. She always worked on cars with me and everything else, and I wouldn't have had it anyway. I wouldn't have known what to do if I actually had a boy. To tell you the truth.
Okay. All right. 4 girls. Okay. And like you said, there's some other children that I guess would be half brothers, half sisters to Kaylene, being that her mother had children, I guess, with another man. So, all right, very interesting. Okay, so she was a tomboy. So let's just talk about that. Was that something natural, this tomboy, something she just grew into naturally?
I think it is. I mean, I never pushed, of course, anything onto any of my children. I think it came natural with Kaylene. Like Kaylene and Haley, they're the 2 that are 100% biological sisters. They're with myself and Tiffany. And Haley, she was always my little princess. She always wanted to wear dresses. She only worked on the car with me once. But Kaylene, it always came natural with Kaylene. Anytime you would take the girls to the store, of course, Haley would want to get her Barbie doll and everything else. Kaylene wanted a Matchbox car.
Wow.
So, Kaylene and I, we had, of course, all my other children would go ahead and say Kaylene was always my favorite child. And any parent knows that's not true. Yeah. She was not my favorite child. I just had a different bond with Kaylene than any of my other children. And Kaylene also was the type where you needed to put more forth an effort into it and be there for her, because like Haley is more independent and everything else, where Kaylene, she always loved having people around and helping her out and everything else. Kaylene was never book smart and everything, but Kaylene had one big heart. Kaylene's heart and personality was so huge and just so precious. And Kaylene's just an amazing person. In high school, Kaylene, like I say, Kaylene, she wasn't for school. School wasn't for her. But in high school, she took a class to help special needs children and everything, and they would go out, and Kaylene would be a chaperone for special needs children. Wow. I get involved in, I'm a inactive volunteer firefighter. I had Kaylene involved also in the fire department at a young age. I moved away, so that's the reason why I said I was a vice president of a men's club at my Catholic church in West Deer. Okay. That's where they grew up and everything. And whenever I would help run the bingos and the fish fries and everything else, Kaylene and Haley were always by my side, help rearranging the classrooms so we could make it in to put tables up and everything for the fish fries and bingos. They grew up basically being very familiar with elderly people because a lot of my friends, of course, from the church and everything else, were in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. So that's where they also had a lot of big caring heart and everything else. And could interact with just about anybody. And that was more Kaylene. Haley, of course, she's not anymore through this happening, but Haley was always my shy child. She was always very quiet, very shy, where Kaylene was very outspoken and everything else. And Kaylene is just like the type of person where she just always loved to be loved. She loved being around family. She loved all of her younger siblings. She loved being a big sister. Because Kaylene's older sister, my oldest daughter, she always lived out of state. So they didn't have a huge relationship, unfortunately. So in turn, Haley and Elena, which is younger than Kaylene, and Tiffany had the other three, which are younger. So in turn, in a way, that made Kaylene like the big sister and everything. So she was always looking out for her younger siblings. She's the type where if anybody, of course, would start with them in school, big sister would start running her mouth and everything. She always protect all of her siblings.
Wow. And where I think that I even know where Kaylene went to high school. Was it Deer Lakes?
Yes, Kaylene went to Deer Lakes. Kaylene went to Deer Lakes. Middle school and high school, I had her in. Kaylene's mother and I had shared custody throughout the kids' lives and everything, but the kids went to school at the time from my house in West Deer. Tiffany, she also, whenever I say Tiffany, that's Kaylene's mother. She also moved into the Deer Lakes area after my mother passed in 2012. So she was closer, so it was easier for her and I with the children and everything. So Kaylene, she did drop out of high school, unfortunately. Like I said, school wasn't a thing for her. But she was looking forward to, before her disappearance, she was looking forward to straightening her life out.
Yeah. Why would you say that she dropped out, Jason?
I would say she dropped out because, like I said, she never liked school. Kaylene didn't books. She's not the type where wanting to sit down in a classroom. It was pulling hair and pulling teeth and everything, trying to get her to do her homework throughout her life.
Okay.
Kaylene actually at the time should have already been graduated anyways, but I held Kaylene back at first grade, and Kaylene failed, I'm pretty sure it was 8th grade, it was either 8th or 9th. Kaylene, in other words, she got held back twice. So at the age of 18, she was still only a sophomore.
Wow.
So, but she, later on, at the age of 20, before her disappearance, that's whenever she decided she wanted to straighten her life out and she wanted to get her GED and everything else.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, in the meantime, though, whenever Kaylene, I unfortunately could always see that in her. So that's why I always tried pushing like a trade on her, a trade school or something. Like I told her that she'd be great with working at a daycare, stuff like that, because I knew that school really was not for Kaylene, period.
Okay. So when she dropped out, what year would that have been, and what did she do? Did she end up getting a job or something, or what did she do, being that she decided she didn't want to go to school anymore?
Okay, Kaylene dropped out. Okay, it's 2021. Kaylene, I'm thinking, well, she dropped out whenever she was 18, so 2007. And since she was 18, she was able to sign. I'm admitting I probably did a poor parenting on this situation, but a parent still had a sign, so I was the other signature. But it was my understanding, because Kaylene promised me she was going to get her GED and move on to like a trade school, which unfortunately Kaylene did not. Kaylene, at the age of 18, she didn't have a job. Kaylene never had a lot of things. And unfortunately, Kaylene just wanted to be Kaylene for a little while.
Yeah.
As much as myself and Tiffany and my wife Robin got on to Kaylene about it for a couple of years and everything, to try to buckle down and everything. Like I said, unfortunately, all of that finally soaked in with Kaylene at the age of 20. She told multiple of her friends that she was going to be, and she said this in December. She disappeared in January.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was, my wife and I, we built a spare bedroom because we were going to bring Kaylene up here full time because she was going to get her GED up here. We set it up for her. And like I said, she told multiple friends that she was going to straighten her. She wanted to straighten her life out. And my wife and I were going to help her do that. And it's just, like I said, unfortunately, whenever she decides she wanted to straighten her life out, that's whenever this started.
This all happened. Yeah, the listeners know, of course, that I am not a parent. I've never had any children or anything, but I think for any parent, when a child, like in this case, when she's 18, of course, we've covered disappearances where young people have dropped out of school even before that age, but you worry about, what are they going to do at that time? I guess idle time is the devil's workshop, or idle hands are the devil's workshop. And so that's why I asked you, did she find something else to take up that time, something constructive, when she decided she didn't want to go to school? And I guess what you're saying is that's not really what happened, at least at that time, right at that moment.
Kaylene was the type at that time, she always found excuses, of course. She was an 18-year-old child.
Yeah.
She always said, I'm going to help Mom watch my younger siblings, or she said, I have this I have to do, or I have that I have to do. Kaylene, of course, was, I'm not going to say a typical 18-year-old at that age, but a typical 18-year-old that doesn't want to do school and tries to find excuses not to go to school.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you for being very honest about all of that, Jason. I know probably that, of course, I think most parents do want their kids to graduate high school, but I think what you're saying here is you kind of knew for a while that she wasn't really, even though she sounds very intelligent, could work on cars with you, etc., paper and books and things, maybe not her thing. So, maybe that, just was the way it was meant to go. Okay. Let's get into some of these things, and we're going to give this you an opportunity to at least clear up something right now, because, and I've read this myself, is that there seems to be an idea out there at the time of her disappearance that Kaylene had a warrant out or something. I think you want to take this opportunity to completely dismiss that, correct?
Yes, I do want to completely dismiss that. The warrant for Kaylene was actually in September. Kaylene actually turned herself in December. Okay. So there is no warrant on Kaylene. She is not on the run. Mm-hmm. And also, they were minor charges of harassment, and Kaylene already had it worked out with the local magistrate and the police on the matter.
Okay.
Prior to she went missing. So no, she actually does not have a current warrant on her. It all got cleared up in the beginning of December. December.
All right. So, and when you say September and December, you mean of 2019?
Correct. I apologize.
That's all right. All right. Just want to make sure. Okay. September to December 2019. Can you even give us an idea of what happened there? Maybe I'll just be point blank with you. Do you believe that these things had anything to do with her? We're of course going to get into the details, but did any of this have anything to do with her disappearance? These scrapes or anything like that?
100% no.
Okay. All right.
And I know it wasn't, because prior to Kaylene's disappearance, she was starting to gain another bond with, a bigger bond with everybody, myself, Tiffany, Robin, my wife, and everything else. And that's the other thing. I mean, there was that's another reason why you can tell there was no warrant, because prior to Kaylene's disappearance, she was out and about. Showing face. She was at our place. She was at Tiffany's place. She didn't have a warrant on her at the time because, like I said, it all got cleared up.
Okay.
But in December, she was just so happy in December. It's like whenever she decided, and I know we'll be getting into it later, whenever Kaylene decided to move on with her life, she was so much more happier. And Kaylene, the last time I personally got to see Kaylene was Christmas of 2019, and Kaylene had back her smile and loving personality and everything. And the reason why I said it had back is because in 2019, Kaylene, she lived pretty much full-time with Robin and I from spring until the beginning of fall of 2019, because we were getting Kaylene's, teeth done and everything. Unfortunately, Kaylene had cavities that she was getting fixed up here and everything. My father passed away that summer, and Kaylene was up here and everything. And that's whenever Kaylene started deciding she wanted to make something of her life. But unfortunately, when Kaylene left my house to go up to visit the other family in Pittsburgh, because I'm an hour and a half away from Pittsburgh, what happened was Kaylene met up with an ex-boyfriend at the time, which I know we're going to be getting into that later. And that's whenever Kaylene was not Kaylene anymore. Okay. Through that time, a month later is whenever she got the harassment charges on her. But whenever she finally got a hold of herself and was able to walk away, that's whenever she just was so much more happier.
Okay. Let's go through some people that we're going to be talking about here very shortly. We're going to just talk about them in general, but I want to do this just to make sure the audience understands who these people are, because like I said, we're going to be mentioning their names here quite regularly here in a little bit. One of the friends that she was with the night that she disappeared, this friend's name is Courtney. I just want you to talk about her in general. How did Kaylene and Courtney know each other? How long did they know each other? Did they know each other from school? Maybe you can give us a little background on Courtney. We're not going to use any last names here, just Courtney.
Okay, that's fine. Courtney, Kaylene knew ever since, I believe, middle school, because I do know they went to Deer Lakes together. And what ended up happening after they both were done in Deer Lakes, they went their separate ways and everything else. And Kaylene's mother, Tiffany, she moved in the Shaler area in Etna, and ironically, Courtney ended up living 10 houses from Tiffany.
Huh.
So, of course, that got Kaylene and Courtney back to becoming close and everything.
Your general impression, of course, before this disappearance happened, of course, but maybe going back to when Kaylene was in high school, did you meet Courtney before? Your impression of her, what did you think of her? Do you think that she was a good friend to Kaylene?
I personally did not meet Courtney, but I personally, of course, knew of Courtney. And the reason why is because I always called Haley my little tattletale. You're going to hear me say mention a lot of Haley because, like I say, Kaylene and Haley are the two biological sisters. They were 3 or 4 years apart, so they were very close, especially at the time I was a single male. So with them both being girls, they had each other. Now, where I'm getting at with this, my little tattletale, Haley, she would tell me everything. There's a lot of times where I would tell her, Haley, so you don't start a fight with your sister. Unless she's going to hurt you or herself, don't tell me. I said, because I was trying to avoid them from always fighting with each other. Not like me, but as sister fighting. Now, I would hear, and I even heard from some of other Kaylene's friends that as a parent, Courtney was the type where you just didn't want your child hanging out with that child. I'm not putting blame on anything on just Courtney because Kaylene's her own person, but it seemed like whenever trouble arose, the two of them were together at times. Okay.
All right. So that's a little bit about Courtney. We'll be talking about her a little later. But there were other young people who also saw Kaylene leave that night. Once again, we're just using first names, but I understand that these were young men. Who were these guys? Do you know them? Had you ever met them?
Okay, one of them I don't know, one of them I do actually know. The one that I didn't know is David, and he is actually Courtney's boyfriend, kid's father. And him I didn't know, but, and I know this is going to come later in the show, but further investigation that I did myself, he had very bad vibes of her boyfriend David, and I know we'll get into that later.
Okay.
The other person is Steven. Now, him I personally knew because that was Kaylene's, high school sweetheart. Steven and Kaylene were boyfriend and girlfriend on and off for years. So Steve, yes, I did know. Of course, in the beginning of their relationship and everything else, of course, me as a parent, I didn't approve of Steven. But then I got to know Steven, and I realized that he was just basically a young male adult that sometimes did some stupid stuff, but he tried to have a good head on his shoulders. Okay.
All right, so you knew him. You knew him because Kaylene and he had known each other for some years. And okay, so he was there that night as well. And we will come back to all of this. Now, the next person we want to talk about, his name is out there. And once again, we're just going to talk about him in general terms, how these two met, how long they had known each other, etc. His name is Michael Manno, Manno. He's quite a bit older than any of those people we just talked about, including Kaylene. How did Kaylene know Michael? How did they meet, etc.?
Okay, of course, it was all hidden from me in the beginning. To what I was told, Kaylene, whenever she left our house in 2019 to go up, spend some time up in the city with her other family and her friends. It was, to my understanding, that they met in September after she left here. from an ex-boyfriend of Kaylene's. And he is, as you said, at the time Kaylene's 20. He, at the time, was 45.
Mm-hmm.
And he is on the internet, on Google. If you Google his name, he is labeled as a career criminal.
Wow.
And that's actually from the Butler paper. He's labeled as a career criminal. So whenever I found out in November. Now, whenever I found out, of course, that did not go over very well.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just say that he lives in Penn Hills, Pennsylvania. Let's just say that whenever I found out about him, within 2 hours later, the Penn Hill police were calling me, saying if I go to his house or if I call him anymore, of course I was going to get arrested for harassment. Because, of course, whenever him and I talked, it didn't go over very well.
So you were, I'm guessing you were telling him stay away from my daughter, etc.
Yes.
Okay.
And, of course, he told the police that I said stuff about his child and everything else. I never did. And I'll say this even over the air, and I'll even say what I said to the police. That was between him and I. I didn't bring no child into this. I have no meaning to ever bring anyone else involved. Mine and his conversation was between him and I.
Okay. All right, just between two men, and it was just about him spending time around your daughter, and you didn't want him to do that. And did you believe that Kaylene, Michael was trying to have some sort of relationship with Kaylene? Was that it?
Yes. Especially there was floating around. It's deactivated now, but there was floating around and of course they were not married and everything else, but there is a Kaylene Manno Facebook social media account, and it was a picture of Kaylene and Manno and his son. So and he was out there of them two kissing each other, so he wasn't making it no secret.
Do you believe that Michael Manno created that profile?
I 100% believe he did, yes.
Okay.
The profile actually, we'll get into this later, deactivated after Kaylene disappeared.
Okay. All right. And did you ever, when you tried to talk to Kaylene about it, how did those discussions go? Once you found this out, how were these discussions with Kaylene?
Not very well, of course.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, Daddy, I love him. I said, I'm older. I know people like him and everything else. Put it this way, I have my 4 daughters with 3 different people, so yes, for years I've had baby mama drama. I'll admit that. Thank God, wood and everything else, I have finally a parenting relationship with all my exes. But at the time I'm admitting, there was times where, unfortunately, I spent a few nights in jail and everything else, and what have you, over stupid stuff. And I, of course, have everything expunged. I spent time in there for. Well, anyways, but I knew whenever I read up upon and investigated Mike Manno myself, I know people like him. Mm-hmm. So that's why, of course, you as a parent, you're going to try your dangest on trying to steer her away.
Right. Now, would you say, and I think this came up the first time we talked, once again, people know I am not a parent. I have never had any children. But would you say this is a situation where you told her not to be around Michael and that only made her want to be around him more? Or what would you say? You said that the conversations didn't go very well, but, did her behavior change at all or not?
No, not really. And it's not one of them situations where it does happen a lot. it does happen whenever, of course, parents try to get somebody, one of their children, to stay away from somebody. Of course, it pushes them there. But Kaylene, up until before her disappearance, Kaylene, like she says, she's her daddy's girl. And whenever I said that the conversations didn't go very well with me and Kaylene, it wasn't just towards me and Kaylene, because like whenever, at the time, unfortunately, it wasn't face-to-face conversation with her about it. It was over the phone and while she was with him. So, of course, he'd be saying stuff in the background and she'd be yelling at him also.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's not what Kaylene, her heart, Kaylene, I always said this was Kaylene's problem. And I said it to Kaylene hundreds, thousands of times. I told her heart was too big because all she wanted to do, she loved being loved. And my opinion, that's where Manno preyed on it.
Yeah.
Especially whenever he met her through Rex and everything else, he's seen how happy and joyful and how she just wanted to be. Kaylene was always clingy and everything. She just loved to be loved. And especially somebody that's, my opinion, in her 40s, and they do have statutory sexual assault convictions and everything else on minors, especially she's, yes, Kaylene was an adult at the time.
Right.
She's 20. But to me, from a 46-year-old, well, he's 46 now, but at the time, a 45-year-old to a 20-year-old, me as a parent in my 40s, I find that disgusting.
Okay.
I know there's people out there, of course, they get younger, and that's so big. I could never. And everything else, I mean, I personally, I'll just say, I want a woman. You know what I mean? My wife, she's a woman and everything else. She doesn't, a 20-year-old still is a child.
Okay. Now, the listeners should know, once again, because I'm from kind of the general area, I know these locations. I know where Penn Hills is. I know where Deer Lakes High School is because I actually used to take swimming lessons there way back in the day in the late 70s, early 80s. I know where Etna is, where she disappeared from. So how was it that these two were getting together, being that he's over in Penn Hills and Kaylene is nowhere near there? Was he driving to see her? Did she have a car going to see him? How were they seeing each other?
No, Kaylene never drove. He would pick her up, and actually, Penn Hill, whenever she would get picked up by him, she would be at Courtney's and David's house and everything. So, in turn, from Courtney's and David's house to Manno, that's actually only a 10-15 minute drive.
Okay.
It's actually not that bad and everything else. And Manno, he doesn't have a license, but he has vehicles and he always drove. And he has a lot of convictions, and actually one of his current conviction is driving without a license.
Okay.
I mean, he has one, but it's suspended.
Okay. All right, so we've talked quite a bit about him. All right, so he's this guy in her life more than twice her age, and if that's not bad enough, he is a criminal with a felony record. In addition, my understanding, he was living with another woman at the time and had a child with her.
Correct. He does have a child with her. I'll just say her first name, Sherry. He does have a child with her. I believe so. It's Michael Jr. And that's the other thing. A lot of times, whenever Manno wasn't going back and forth picking her up from Courtney's, Manno does have a couple of campers and camps. It was brought to my attention that at times he had Kaylene in one of the campers.
Wow. Okay. All right. So we got a very complete picture on him. Once again, we'll be talking about him again in a bit. Now, here's the other thing that could involve him is that is there proof that before she went missing that Kaylene was pregnant?
Yes.
All right.
Now, it's been proven by doctor, but there is, Courtney has messaged that Kaylene's pregnant. Kaylene has messaged that she was pregnant. Michael Manno messaged that Kaylene, and the reason why I'm saying message is because it's all on black and white. And I will say, whenever Kaylene was up here in October of 2019, I will say that I personally, Kaylene went to go take a shower. I personally went to take clothes into her bedroom, and how her purse was sitting, I will say I seen a pregnancy test myself.
Okay.
So yes, I'm admitting she was 20, and I'm admitting as soon as I saw that, I grabbed it and I came sitting in the living room waiting for her to be done. And I confronted Kaylene about it, and I told her flat out, "Is this true?" and everything else. She said yes. Robin and I, we made Kaylene a doctor's appointment so she can go get pregnancy tested for STDs and a physical and everything else. And unfortunately, she never got to go to that appointment because that's how she ended up disappearing. Unfortunately, her appointment was in January.
Okay.
Well, anyway, so we never got it confirmed, but there are multiple people out there, including Kaylene, Manno, Courtney, other mutual friends of theirs. Like someone said in the beginning of Kaylene's disappearance, she's not missing, she's pregnant. There's at least 10 people out there that confirm Kaylene was pregnant at the time.
Okay, let me ask you a couple questions regarding that though. When you confronted her about her being pregnant, when you happened upon this pregnancy test, did she tell you who the father was?
No.
All right. Did you ask her?
I asked her and everything else. I asked her, but she refrained from telling me at the time.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
I think that was the key because she knows how I felt about Manno.
Right.
Now, at the time, I surprised Kaylene. And I think this is another thing that triggered her that she wanted to do something different with her life because I did something different with Kaylene. Instead of arguing and fighting with her, I looked at her and I said, "Fine, you're pregnant. Move up here so we can help you."
Mm-hmm.
My wife is disabled. She's home 24/7. I said she can help you with the baby, get your GED, and we'll help get you a job, everything else, straighten your life out. And that triggered Kaylene, I feel as though, to want to better herself. So she even told one of my good friends, one of her good friends from West Deer Lakes, Crystal, she even told her, "I'm going to be moving at my dad's and getting my life together." And she was happy about it.
Okay. So once again, though, she personally never told you who the father was. Just
Okay. She told me to go in December, at the end of December, she said it was Manno.
Okay. You said that you had it in black and white that she was pregnant from Courtney, Michael, Kaylene. When you say black and white, do you mean like you've seen text messages or Facebook Messenger messages? What do you mean?
Both. It was messenger messages and text messages. I've had them sent to me, and there was, just those two. But like I said, I do. No, there was what's it called, posts on Facebook about it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That posts about it also.
Okay, so multiple sources here that Kaylene was pregnant. Of course, I think pregnancy tests these days are pretty accurate. So I don't know if we, I think it was a great idea that she was going to get seen by a doctor. I think that was a great idea. But pregnancy tests these days are, I think, fairly accurate. So I think that we can say, being that you saw that it was positive, that all of that put together surely says that she was pregnant, and your belief to this day is that Michael Manno was the father.
Correct. Yes, because later on, which I know will probably be in discussion, on a mutual friend of Kaylene and Mike Manno's, it was Kaylene mentioning to this friend, which her name I'm not going to say.
Okay.
She's friend everything else and been helping us with the investigation. But she even said about how Michael is a father and he doesn't want to have anything to do with us and everything. Michael was also messaging the girl at the time, and he was saying, I will not leave my son's mom. I will not have my son part-time.
Okay.
To me, those are starting to be red flags.
Right. Okay, let's move up now. So we got all of that. A lot of things going on in Kaylene's life. A lot of things, a lot of big decisions that she was going to having to be making. Being pregnant, where she's going to live, how she's going to handle this situation with Michael Manno, being that she believed, everybody believed at the time that he was the father, etc. So we move up here to January 9th of 2020, and what do you know about Kaylene's movements that day, starting in the morning or the early afternoon, and then concluding with her ending up at Courtney's house, and then we'll take it from there. What were her movements? What was she doing in Etna, etc.?
Okay, at the time, she was still up there from the holidays, helping her mom out with the children, and we'll get into that because that actually has to do with January 10th about Tiffany's children. What I was told was all day January 9th. I don't know if Kaylene slept over there from January 8th to the 9th, but it was, to my understanding, the whole day of January 9th that Kaylene was at Courtney and David's house, spending time with them, and spending time also with her ex-boyfriend Steven at the time, because they would still remain friends at the time and everything. So, to my understanding, of course, they were just doing every normal, these are adolescent adults and everything else. Who knows exactly what they were doing and everything, but they were all at Courtney and Dave's house.
Okay, so that's where they were, down in Etna. And maybe we should make this clear. Like you said earlier in this conversation, you do not live in the area where she disappeared. You lived up near Newcastle, Pennsylvania?
Yes, I'm on the outskirts of Newcastle, and actually prior to that and everything, of course, my house, my wife and I, we have a cottage, and a few of our cottages are on 15 acres. We have cameras all over the house, all over outside and everything. But at the time of 2019, it was the summer, no, not summer, I apologize, from fall until spring of 2020, I had multiple operations, so I was pretty much bedridden. Wow. And that's another reason why Kaylene also was coming up, because she was helping myself and my wife, Robin, help me and everything else.
Okay. I guess what I'm trying to establish here is you're up in the Newcastle area. People can check on a map. Etna and Newcastle are nowhere near each other. I would say maybe an hour away.
Oh, actually more than that.
More than that.
It's 56 miles away from each other, and it takes an hour and 25 minutes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then, Kaylene's mother, Tiffany, where did she live?
She lived actually like 10 houses from Courtney in Etna.
Okay. So Kaylene's down in that area, and her mother lives, like you said, right there at the house, near where the house, where Kaylene last was. Okay. I just wanted to establish that. Okay. So she's there. Your belief is that she's over at Courtney's house right down the street. You've already mentioned this David guy who was there. You'd never got a very good feeling about. And what goes on that evening? You also said that this friend of Kaylene's, that I think a guy that I think you thought was a pretty good friend with Kaylene. They're all there, and what's going on? They're just hanging out.
Yeah, they're all just hanging out, and I do want to back up 1 second. I do also want to mention, there's something else I didn't mention. I haven't driven a vehicle since actually May of 2019, prior to all this.
Wow.
Because I have diabetes real bad, and I have neuropathy, and I've been diagnosed and everything. I have neuropathy on my right leg from knee down.
Oh,
so having my driver's leg, I haven't driven since May of 2019.
Wow. You got a lot of stuff going on, Jason.
Yeah, medically I do.
Wow.
Okay, I apologize. I forgot to add that. Now, like we discussed, it was to my understanding they were just all hanging out and everything. Kaylene, I want to say Kaylene was addicted to social media.
Mm-hmm.
Right before the disappearance, she was on Facebook Live. I never got a chance to see it because I was never friends with Kaylene on Facebook. My wife and I, we didn't even have internet after all this started happening. But Kaylene, she kept posting all throughout the day. Kaylene was being a 20-year-old person addicted to social media.
Yeah. And right, you had told me that she had used Facebook Live. Do we even know what that Facebook? I think you have a screenshot of it. I think that I've seen, but do you even know what she was saying? Did anybody watch that as to what she was talking about during that Facebook Live on the evening of January 9th of 2020?
No, and I do not believe it was even recovered by the police either.
Right. Okay. All right, so that goes on, and she does, though, Kaylene does talk to her mother that night, though. Even though her mother's just 10 doors down, they talked over the phone or something?
No.
Oh.
What ended up happening was at 1:36 a.m., the last time Kaylene's phone was pinged, she either messaged her mom or texted her mom that she was going to be there at 9:30 a.m. to watch her younger siblings.
Okay.
And the reason I wanted to emphasize she didn't talk to my ex is because that's the same time like a Manno's phone came with Kaylene's phone. So due to it was a text or a messenger message, that could have been anybody.
Right. Okay. And do you think that Kaylene going to her mother's, that was something that had been even prearranged before January 10th, January 9th? That was something that scheduled?
Yes.
Okay.
Kaylene is not the person, I've even said this in the beginning about her and children and her and loving her younger siblings. Kaylene's not the type not to show up to watch her little siblings. She adored it. Okay.
All right, so she's at Courtney's early into the hours of January 10th, and Courtney's there, this David's there, this other guy who's good friends there. What do they say happened? What do they say went on?
Now, what they told police, all three of them told police the same story that Mike Manno told police, was that around, let's say, 1 after 1 a.m., Kaylene left the house, walked down the street to meet Michael Manno down the street in Lower Etna.
Okay.
Now, a few things on that don't fit well with me.
Well, let's just we're just going to stick to what they said first. They said, let's just stick to the facts and what the witnesses said. They said, was this something where Michael Manno called her or texted her? How did she even know that he was going to be in the area to even walk down the street to meet him? Do you know?
Manno and Kaylene were messaging each other back and forth all day.
Okay.
They were messaging, they were calling, and everything else. Kaylene was trying to retrieve some of her jewelry from a mother that passed in 2012 off of Michael Manno. So they were messaging and talking to each other throughout the whole day on January 9th.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was through a text or one of the phone conversations, but finally Manno agreed to meet up with Kaylene, and then that's whenever Kaylene met up with him at between 1:15 and 1:30 a.m. January 10th.
Okay. Let me ask you some questions here. So they knew at the time that she was going to be meeting Michael Manno. That all the people at the house knew that.
Yes.
Okay. And can you? Let me put it this way. Did they think that Kaylene was coming back? I mean, was she just going to meet him down the street and then she was going to return? What did they think? Your impressions, if you've talked to them, did they think that she was just going to come back 10 minutes later, or did they think that Kaylene was going to get in a car with Michael Manno and they were going to take off, go somewhere? What do you think? What did they say?
They think she was coming back, and here's the reason why. I got clothes of Kaylene I didn't get it from Courtney. Tiffany got clothes of Kaylene's from Courtney and gave them to me. So which means Kaylene had clothes at Courtney's, and the only thing Kaylene left with was her purse. So they all assumed she was coming back.
All right, they all assumed she was coming back, but did she say so? I know this is very technical, but I'm trying to just establish, if she didn't come back in 10 minutes, if they thought she was supposed to come back in 10 minutes, they should have been very suspicious of that. So I'm just trying to wonder if they thought she was going to be coming back soon, or this is going to be something where those two who knew each other, of course, were just going to go off, and then he was just going to drop Kaylene off at her mother's, later that morning to for the reason we've already talked about.
My belief is they pretty much thought that he was going to drop Kaylene off at her mom's in the morning.
All right, so they didn't think that she was going to be coming right back then.
Not right back that evening, no.
Okay, so being that she was gone more than 10, 15 minutes, it didn't seem to worry them at all.
No.
Okay. All right, thank you. I just want to make that clear because I think it's always important to get the, inside the minds of these people who are witnesses, to think what they were thinking at the time. I think that's very important, for the listeners to understand, trying to put all of ourselves in their position because we do cover disappearances where people do walk off. And, I think of Joe Bain as a disappearance that we covered where he said that he was going somewhere and he's going to a party or we don't really even know. He goes, "Don't wait up for me. I'll be back tomorrow morning." And then he never came back. So I just wanted to make sure we can try to put the listeners, there on that early morning of January 10th and try to get in that side of the heads of these other people who were there. All right, so they know that she's going to meet Michael Manno. Not worried about that because the two know each other. Of course, you don't like Michael Manno, but that's what she did. And so let's go here now. When do you and your family know something is wrong?
9:30 that next morning, 9:30 a.m. January 10th. That's whenever I got a phone call from Kaylene's mother, Tiffany. The reason why she knew something was wrong is because she had to go to work, and Kaylene has never not put her mother up to watch her younger siblings.
Okay.
Right then and there is whenever Tiffany knew something was wrong and she called me.
Okay. And what did you do? I'm guessing you all tried to text and call her, and what were the results of that?
Okay, now, like I said, I wasn't on the internet. I also got from Tiffany at the time. She was telling me that, in which this is where I really found out. She said Kaylene's social media is deactivated. And like I said, Kaylene, she's the type, if you search her name on social media, she has like 10, 15 accounts. She's in any of them. She doesn't know. She never knew. Well, not never, but she forgot the passwords and stuff. But for her to have a current, at the time, Facebook account that was deactivated, that was disturbing. And then of course, I'm calling Kaylene from my other phone and everything else, leaving messages, leaving text messages, everything else. I even threatened Kaylene, saying that I was going to go to the police and report her missing. Nothing back. Because at the time, unfortunately, Tiffany and we thought you had to wait 48 hours to report an adult missing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we were all, as a family, Kaylene's aunts and uncles, Kaylene's other sister, we're all texting her, trying to call her. Now, I didn't have no communications, of course, with Manno. So Tiffany did at the time. So she even was calling and texting Manno and getting no response.
Okay. All right. So you can't reach her. One of her accounts have been disabled, and this is just 8 hours after she walked down the street to meet Michael Manno in what you called Lower Etna. Etna is like a suburb, near downtown Pittsburgh, on what I know is to be Route 28, right there along the Allegheny River. All right, so you can't reach him either. Did you or Tiffany, once again, Kaylene's mother, did you try to contact Courtney and those others to find out, hey, what's the deal? Kaylene was with all of you last night. She didn't show up. What did they have to say?
Courtney was contacted by Tiffany because Courtney and Tiffany were living close with each other, and with that being one of Kaylene's friends, they got close, Tiffany and Courtney. And I can't go ahead and really say exactly what Courtney said because I don't know. But I do know that was handling that part and everything, asking them where's Kaylene, everything else, and the only thing I do know is everybody just kept saying she was last seen with Michael Manno. Okay.
So maybe I want to put it this way. So your belief is that when Tiffany finally did, maybe she walked down the street and it was only 10 houses, or she called Courtney, Tiffany, once again, Kaylene's mother, that Courtney said, yeah, the last time I saw her, she was walking down the street to meet Michael Manno. That is a belief that you have.
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right, so that's how Michael Manno, I guess, is brought into this, being that people who last saw Kaylene know that she walked away and said that she was going to meet Michael Manno. And there are messages to that effect that you have seen that Kaylene and Michael were looking to meet each other. Maybe we need to go over, though, why she was going to meet him. Of course, there's the belief that she was pregnant with Michael Manno's child, but that was not the reason. You had mentioned it just kind of in passing a few minutes ago, Jason. Something about jewelry. Maybe you need to mention that, please.
Now, my mother passed away in 2012. Kaylene and Haley were very close to my mom. Moved down the street from my mom prior to that to help take care of my mom. And I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with the saying, I had Kaylene and Haley latchkey children at my mom's house. That means my children, since I lived in the same district, my children would catch the bus from my mother's house. It would help me out because whenever I would work and everything, I needed the adults there and everything for my children. So Kaylene Oehling was very close to my mom and everything. So after my mom passed, we gave Kaylene and Haley jewelry of my mom. And I raised the children to be like very sentimental. Like I still have I took all of them on a train trip and I still have that ticket. Like to say things that you remember and it brings you joy to this day remembering about it. Now Kaylene, she had some of her jewelry that we gave her from my mom. She had it in one of Michael Manno's campers. So, and unfortunately, and I know we'll get into this a lot later in everything, Manno, he's been convicted of theft and burglary. So he is a known thief. And unfortunately, I wish, still to this day, that Kaylene wouldn't have did something like that by herself, that she would have, like, I don't know, taken someone else with her, whatever, or just forget about the jewelry.
Yeah.
Because my mom would even say, it's jewelry, you have the memories. But Kaylene, she's very stubborn, very thick-headed. If she had set in her mind that she was going to get the jewelry back, she had set in her mind she was getting the jewelry back.
Okay.
And that's the reason why they met up. Kaylene went to go get the jewelry back.
All right, so she knew that Michael had taken this jewelry, and she was going to try to get it back from him, you know, and hoping that he would just give it right back over to her.
Correct.
Okay, that's why they were meeting that night. And did you know even before this that Michael had taken that jewelry, or did you not find that out until after she went missing?
I did not find that out actually until after we reported Kaylene missing.
Okay. All right, so we go into January 10th. When is Michael Manno finally reached, either by you, by Tiffany, by somebody else, by the police? And what does he say about all of this?
Manno was finally reached January 12th. Tiffany, she filed a report with the Etna police of Kaylene's disappearance on the 12th. I followed it up with an email because, once again, I mean, I live in Newcastle, and at the time I was bedridden because that week I had hemorrhoid surgery. And, I mean, at that time I had I didn't have the hemorrhoids tied off. At that time I had hemorrhoids cut out. So I was bedridden for a good month.
Okay.
At that. Now, what ended up happening was the police the Etna police called Penn Hills Police to do a welfare checkup at Manno's. They went up to Manno's on the 12th. Manno said Kaylene wasn't there, and the Penn Hills Police said okay, and he closed the door and walked off. And that was that.
Did it come up at that time, once again on January 12th, that did it ever come up that he met Kaylene just a couple days before that, very early in the morning? Did that come up on January 12th?
Oh, yes. I apologize. It's one of them just as quick as Kaylene here and no, and okay, I'm gonna walk away. They did say, when was the last time you seen Kaylene? And he verified that it was in the middle of the night of January 10th.
Okay.
And everything. So he did verify even there before he has been interrogated multiple times. He did verify on the 12th that he was with Kaylene. But his story was he dropped Kaylene off to a Marcus from Lawrenceville. which we can get into that later.
Well, I certainly want to talk about that right now. Being that Michael Manno admits seeing Kaylene on the early morning, let's say just pick out a time of 1:30 a.m. January 10th. He admits that she was in his car. He admits that he took her somewhere else. Has this other person ever been located, identified at all?
Correct. He has not been identified. He has not even been identified from Etna Police or Allegheny County Police that this person even exists.
All right. So what Michael Manno is saying, he dropped Kaylene off at some guy's house. He doesn't even know the guy's last name, Marcus, quote unquote Marcus.
Yes.
Okay.
And that is so on black and white because he's even said it on a comment later on in a post that he. So that's even also on black and white. Manno say she's with Marcus.
Okay. And has he ever, being that he dropped her off with Marcus, a house, an intersection, ever?
He never said where. He didn't say if. Basically, he just said she's with Marcus. He didn't say I dropped her off at Marcus's house or met up at a 7-Eleven. He just says, all I know is she's with Marcus.
Okay. All right, Michael Manno, if that's the story you want to tell. Okay. Any searches done for Kaylene in those? We're going to talk about searches that have been done later, but you doing personally. But at the time, there in January of 2020, any searches done? Did you even have anywhere to look?
No, not at all. And it was brought to my attention probably about mid-April that I thought Etna police were actually even searching Manno's premises, something. I found out in mid-April that they didn't even conduct no warrants, no searches at the time.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So, and that is not good, but the search part of it is a little difficult, especially when, Michael Manno is telling this story about being with this Marcus guy that I don't think it's a story that anybody believes, but, where are you really going to search? Michael Manno doesn't deny being in Etna. He admits seeing Kaylene. He admits seeing her, etc. So, where do you go from there? Okay. And I completely understand some of the frustration that you have expressed with police at the local level and then at the county level in Pennsylvania. Maybe we can talk about that a little later. But let's move on. Please.
As a family, we did searches.
Yeah. Okay.
But we did, like you said, we didn't know a specific area, so we were hanging flyers that we made ourselves in Penn Hill, Road, all the surrounding areas.
Okay.
We as a family did something, but nothing to the extent where police needed to get warrants to search this premises, that property, and stuff like that. Okay.
To your knowledge, of course, we know this, at least in Unfound's world, this is a fairly new disappearance happening in early 2020, and we're doing this interview on February 16th, 2021. To your knowledge, have any warrants ever been served on Michael Manno's house, those trailers that you've talked about, any vehicles that he has, any of that in the last year?
Yes.
Okay.
I do know towards the end of Etna having the case, they did serve 2 warrants at his house, and they conducted an interview with him. But after Etna police finally transferred the case to Allegheny County on June 15th, 2020, there has been multiple searches by Allegheny County. More searches, of course, by us as Kaylene family, because at this time we have an idea of more spots, especially finding out where all the areas where the phones pinged and everything else. Now we had more of an idea where the basis of the origin was. Now, I personally have gathered a lot of information for Allegheny County Homicide Unit on places where to go, because I questioned people myself and everything else, and I found a lot of places. I do want to say there are two very possible locations that I found. And
Jason, let me be a little more specific on some of these things, because I want to talk about some of the social media. I do want to talk about the pings specifically, but when you say that you were kind of doing your own investigation, I'm not saying you have to give up any sources or anything, but how did you go about doing this and finding places to search, etc., that you could pass along to police? How did you do that?
I guess the proper word, interrogated a couple of people myself. One being related to Manno by marriage.
Okay.
I'm admitting the police know this because the information I gathered, I gave it right to them and everything else. So there was, and then I have multiple pages for Kaylene, so there is also some people that reached out to me and said, oh, Manno has told us this, Manno has told us that. That's another way I also found out on some places, which some of them, every what do they call it? Every lead is a lead until you find out it's not a lead. Now, what happened was there is, of course, a couple that I didn't trust and believe in myself, but I still sent the information to the authorities. But there is a couple that caught my eye, and the only reason why is because multiple different people were mentioning these places. So whenever they have more than one person mentioning a place, to me that's a red flag.
Okay. All right. Thank you for explaining that. Let's move on to some of these things because I think they're fairly important. You know, we've talked quite a bit about Kaylene's social media, but I want to talk about one specific post that she made. It seems before her that somebody got to see that before her accounts were shut down, she actually made a post about Michael Manno. What did she post? When did this happen?
Kaylene posted January 10th. It was around 1:03 a.m., which was roughly a 15 minutes to a half hour of her and Manno meeting up with each other. We all know that Manno has a very extensive background. He's a convicted felon of over 13 felonies, and this is just in the state of Pennsylvania. He's been also convicted in other states where I personally don't have the resource to get that stuff. But I know he's been arrested in Florida. He's been arrested in Virginia and Georgia also. Well, anyways, Kaylene posted, and when Michael Manno, and she tagged him, so he knew she posted this. When Michael Manno and I were together, he even robbed a ATM and a laundromat in Penn Hills.
Oh, my God.
Now, he's currently on probation at the time, and facing, from that December, he got charged again before Kaylene went missing. December 2019, he got charged again, so he was even out on bail. So, Kaylene posting that on a convicted felon someone who was currently on probation at the time and currently out on bail, I wish she wouldn't have posted that.
I gotta ask. I mean, once again, you're saying she posted this within a half hour of her walking out to meet Michael Manno down the street in Lower Etna. Why can you knew your daughter, you know your daughter? Why would she ever post that, even if it's true?
Because I know my daughter. Whenever he obviously got her so pissed off to the part where she just didn't care. It almost sounded like Kaylene wanted to also, since he didn't want to have nothing to do with Kaylene, it sounded like maybe possibly Kaylene wanted to, not the words destroy him, but tell on him.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, Kaylene did it in a way that it was a 20-year-old not thinking, not properly realizing for somebody that has very bad felony convictions, you don't go ahead, especially whenever you're Kaylene. I mean, for everybody who doesn't know her description, she's very petite. She's 5'1" and maybe 110 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Kaylene's eating everything else. So, and with Manno being 6 foot something, close to 200-300 pounds, as weigh everything else, you don't piss somebody off like that, especially rat them out to where they can catch more charges.
Right. Wow. Okay. So she's kind of airing out that he committed this crime, maybe a crime that was still unsolved at the time. Maybe. Is there? I should ask though. Is there any proof that he did this? Do you even know?
No, there is. It was never investigated. There's no proof that he did it.
Okay. All right. And so you had talked about her social media footprint at all, though we've just talked about Facebook. Did she have Instagram, Snapchat accounts? Do you know? Were those shut down?
I'm going to be very old-fashioned on what I'm going to say. I think so, but I don't know what. And the reason why is, like, for instance, I have a Twitter account and other accounts now because I have flyers posted. I don't even know how to get on them. But I do. Haley, my 17-year-old, has told me, I guess, Kaylene did have other type of accounts. I guess there's something called a Snapchat.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yep.
I do know Kaylene had other social media stuff. Now, everything is still active, to my understanding.
Right.
Because I'm friends with her, according to Haley, because she's friends with her on all these accounts. Every account is still active except the one account where Kaylene accused Manno of robbing the ATM. That's the only account that was shut down.
Okay.
Except the Kaylene Manno account, but a month, 2 months after Kaylene's disappearance, that mysteriously shut down also. Manno goes ahead on Facebook saying that Kaylene's family had that, like a Kaylene Manno account, and we shut that down. We didn't have that account. He did. And I do know that because it was tracked back to his IP address.
Okay. All right. So there's that. A lot of computer stuff going on. In fact, you admitted that you didn't even have the internet until all this happened.
No, my wife and I did it. We went on in November. We went off, but only because we got it up on sheets at the gas station.
Yeah.
We would go on the Wi-Fi. But up until I think it was April of 2020, we didn't have the internet at the house.
Okay.
Finally, it got to the point, of course, the longer Kaylene was missing and everything else, and we knew social media was going to have to be our friend in being Kaylene's voice and everything. Robin, my wife, she said, let's get the internet so we can try and spread the word of Kaylene.
Okay. Interesting. All right, let's move on to this, because we've talked about the phone information at least a little bit. You had said that she had texted her mother. There's a question whether this was a text sent by Kaylene or not, that she would be there at 9:30 on January 10th in the morning to babysit, watch the kids. Of course, she did not show up, and that was like the main, that was the first sign that something wasn't right. But you'd already also mentioned that Michael Manno and Kaylene were exchanging messages over January 9th. But you do have some ping information. In fact, you have information regarding Kaylene's phone after she left the house, and you told me that it was shut off shortly after that. Why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Okay, Kaylene's phone was last pinged in Lower Etna at 1:36 a.m., January 10th, which Michael Manno's phone was pinged on the same location at the same time. Kaylene's phone never pinged again to this date, which is also a red flag about Kaylene, because Kaylene, even whenever I didn't want Kaylene having a cell phone, she had a cell phone. She always did it. Kaylene always loved social media, phones, and everything else. Now, those were the last times that Kaylene's phone pinged was 1:36 a.m. with Manno's phone. Okay. Now, I do know that an hour later, Manno's phone pinged. I do know who he called, and I do know 3.5 to 4 hours later, his phone was pinged again, and I know that location and who he called. All the locations, I'm not going to say a specific place, but all the locations revolve around Etna and Penn Hills. You and I already discussed that.
Yeah, you don't want to. Yeah, we don't want to put that stuff out. Yeah.
And the reason why I'm watching what I'm saying is because, of course, it's still an open investigation. But as you and I spoke offline, all these areas, everything is within basically a whole, 15-mile radius or less of all his phone pinging in this time. Now, the reason why I also point out from 1:36 a.m. to the other time his phone pinged, like around 4:30 a.m., the reason why I bring up his phone in this location is because that's another reason why we found out 2 separate locations where Kaylene could be, because it's actually in the middle of both these locations.
All right. And I do have to ask, being that you're saying that you have this information, if you can say, you don't have to, but if you can say, how did you get, I can understand you having maybe Kaylene's information or texts or last pings. How have you gotten this information regarding Michael Manno's phone information?
From the police themselves.
They told you this?
Yes, from the police themselves. They told me, and I even got it on email from the police themselves, because, of course, a lot of people say, oh, there's no suspects. Like, they even stated they're not going to say his name because he's not charged yet. They can't say his name.
Yeah.
I'm not an officer. I know it's Manno, and what a lot of people don't realize, whenever he's got now, whenever, like, Allegheny served multiple warrants at his house from June until today, they just got done questioning his girlfriend 2 months ago again. They questioned him multiple occasions, and they get warrants for his phone and social activity and everything else. Come on, do the math. There's the suspect right there. Now, the reason why the news said suspects I know that reason. You know that reason. That is staying out of public for right now because it's still an investigation. Now, I do know of other suspects, which I cannot reveal their names at this time because they're still in the beginning of getting investigated.
Right. And the thing is that there's nothing. I mean, it's Courtney and company who admitted that they all knew that she was walking out to talk to Michael Manno. You know, so we can certainly talk about him. I mean, if they're going to say that Kaylene was going to talk to Michael Manno, in fact, Michael Manno has even admitted seeing Kaylene that night. I mean, we're going to talk about him. I mean, we can certainly, you know, so there's nothing wrong with that. Although, certainly from the police perspective, you know, they obviously can't say as much. Certainly true.
Police and news, you always say, oh, they're not going to say, but me personally, and everybody that's followed the case, I have over 10,000 followers now on social media. I don't know what that means. Haley told me that means a lot of people, like over 10,000 people, follow Kaylene's story because that's what I have up.
Yeah.
So everybody that's been following the story from the get-go, they know a lot that's been going on. That Manno's yard has been searched multiple occasions. There's been protests in front of Manno's house. Manno says over social media, he said during interrogations by both police departments, yeah, I was the last one to see Kaylene. But he tells them Kaylene's alive and well and doesn't want bothered. So with him saying, and we don't know where Kaylene is, with him saying Kaylene's alive and don't want to be bothered. But then there's a different red flag. I have, and I sent to you a video of actually even Michael Manno stating to my ex-brother-in-law, Paul, Kaylene was swimming with the fish and you're going to be joining her. And he said that on video knowing he was being videoed.
Where did that happen? How did that happen? When?
It happened in front of his house during one of the protests. And Michael Manno at first and throughout the whole thing was basically being cocky. He's seen people protesting in front of his house. He's saying that he's a murderer and where's Kaylene? We'll leave if you show us Kaylene. And he was trying, of course, make himself look like Mr. Saint and bringing out water, and I guess he brought out chicken to them too. I never went to the protest. I can't go up near his property. Well, during one of these protests, he told my ex-brother-in-law, Paul, it is on video, and it's on social media, and it was sent to the police. He told Paul goes, where is Kaylene? And Manno, while he's holding a tray with water, he goes, she's swimming with a fish, and you're going to be joining her.
Wow. Okay. And by the time everybody is hearing our voices for this episode, Jason, I will have posted, because you sent me that video, it will be posted on Unfound's website, theunfoundpodcast.com, so everybody can see it for themselves. Wow. Okay.
And of course,
please.
It sounded a little muffled, but of course, police, they have the opportunity that they did verify that is what he said.
Okay. All right. I will post it. It will be posted so people can judge that for themselves. In fact, you sent me quite a bit of material that will be posted on Kaylene's page on our website, and all that stuff is already been posted. Once again, this episode is coming out February 19th, and all that stuff will be posted before the episode comes out. So everybody right now, as they are listening to our voice, can go to theunfoundpodcast.com to find those items. Let's move on to this, and probably this is something that's a little distressing. There was a man at some point who contacted you, and you made some connection, unfortunately, between somebody in the Etna Police Department and Michael Manno. Why don't you tell everybody how that came about?
Okay. Of course, Manno has me blocked on all my social media accounts. And at that time, I had an account that wasn't in my name and everything else, so Manno couldn't trace that account and everything. What ended up happening was I found out that somebody that my main account was friends with, I seen that he was friends with Michael Manno on Facebook also. So him and I were talking, and I didn't like mention to him about he was friends with Manno. I wanted to start talking to him sticky what he was going to say. So I started talking to him about the chief of police in Etna, how I find that he was very unprofessional, multiple different reasons why. According to Steven Zappala, DA's office, I talked to one of the detectives, Scott, there. I believe so is his name. And he told me that Etna Police didn't even put Kaylene in the computer system until March 13th, which was 2 months later. Now, what I found disturbing was whenever I was talking to him about how I didn't like how the Etna chief was handling this case, he goes, "Oh, he's my best friend." He was like, I sent you these messages also, and he goes, "I trust him with my kids." Now, I found all this disturbing for a couple of different reasons. That to me, that's a big conflict of interest, especially if Manno is friends with the best friend of the chief of the police who's investigating this. For those who don't know this, Etna and Sharpsburg are next to one another. They are two towns next to one another, which means there's a lot of times where they accept like the same police calls and they work together.
Yeah.
The other thing that I found out that was disturbing is Manno's real good friends with all the officials in Sharpsburg, and he attends and rides in the parade with those chiefs, with the Sharpsburg chief of police and the Sharpsburg mayor, which I also found disturbing due to the fact they all now or have some type of connection with each other. Now, I'm not going ahead and say Etna chief of police is friends with Manno himself, but I did find out that this man stated, and I have a picture about it, this man stated that he is best friends with the chief of police, and he is also friends with Manno on Facebook, which I have that also on the snapshot.
Do you think this is just a small world? Did this guy even explain why he was friends with Michael Manno, etc.? What do you think?
I never asked him because at that point, whenever he said I'm best friends with the chief and everything else, at that point, I'm admitting I blocked him because I was seeing, right?
Yeah.
Because I felt though that Kaylene's case was not properly investigated from the get-go properly as it is. So now I'm really seeing red.
Yeah, you're ticked off.
Not only
yeah.
that, I felt as though it's a big conflict of interest for one, and two, another reason I felt as though it's a big conflict of interest, I've never said this yet, and I said this to you the other day. I've never said it to any other podcast. Etna has also arrested me in the past. Which to me, is this why they sat on Kaylene's case so long before a proper investigation?
So what you're saying here, Jason, I'm hoping that this is just some sort of situation where it's, a big city, but it's a small city. Everybody knows each other, kind of like Las Vegas was, where I used to live, very much the same thing. Or, we're hoping that this wasn't some sort of conflict of interest that went to the point that, well, we're just going to put Kaylene's disappearance on the back burner until we feel like it.
Yeah, a few things on that actually scare me. Starting off with, whenever I found out this information and everything else, I confronted the Etna mayor about it and the Etna manager about it, and I showed them black and white. Okay? I showed them what I discovered. I showed them it, and I kept begging them for 6 months to have the case transferred, because Etna doesn't even have a detective in the force. They had a street officer, Officer Straw, handling the case, but he's a patrol officer. Yeah. I do not one bit blame Patrol Officer Straw. I don't. I'm not also saying any of this because I'm against police. I love the police. I'll be the first one to stand in front of them to help protect them from idiots. But my concern was how the chief handled all this, how the officials handled all this, because I sent to the mayor of Etna, I sent to the manager the stuff that I uncovered that he has possible ties with the suspect of my daughter's disappearance, and it's not properly being investigated. And none of the officials in the borough of Etna wanted to go ahead and answer my cries. Now, they can't go ahead and deny getting the messages because it shows on my end red. So I know, and like for instance, later on I followed up with the township manager, the borough's manager, about doing the 1-year vigil at Etna Ball Field, and I have that message and everything. I canceled the vigil, and Tiffany's side of the family ended up picking up the vigil, so we ended up having it anyways. But I originally was going to have it, and I asked the Etna Borough manager if from the same messages that I sent them about the chief of police, if I could use the ball field for a visual, and they replied back, yes, it's January 10th, 2021. There's no type of ball activity and everything else. You're more than welcome to use the field. So, to me, it concerns me that I kept, and with going to the chief of this involves the chief of police, so I couldn't go to no higher officer. Yeah. You're going to be able to depend on the chief of police if something's not acting right. Something wasn't acting right from the chief of police himself. Mm-hmm. I don't know who to go to other than the mayor of Etna and also the manager of Etna, and saying, this is what's happening. In my eyes, it's a conflict of interest. Please have my daughter's case transferred. Nobody answered my cries.
Now,
Finally, a state representative answered my cries in June, and that's how we got the ball rolling of getting Allegheny County Homicide Unit involved.
And so Allegheny County, which listeners should know, that is the county where Pittsburgh is. They are now responsible?
Correct, yes. At first in June, it was both departments, but like Allegheny County said, because I told them I had multiple problems with Etna, and like Allegheny reassured me, they're doing a separate investigation than Etna was. So they weren't like coercing with each other. So I was comfortable on that, but finally it was brought to my attention sometime in the summertime that I guess, not summertime, I apologize, in the fall time, I guess Officer Straw, who had Kaylene's case, he's off duty for some reason. I don't know if he got hurt or something. So the case is just solely transferred to Allegheny County Homicide Unit now.
Okay.
Now, I do want to mention what they told me from the get-go, because I helped them build a case. Because actually, Etna Police told them to go to me to find out more information. It was sad whenever a police station said I had more information than they did. So I sat down for the first actual weekend for a total of like 16 hours with detectives, giving them everything I had, because I had over 20,000 snapshots and locations that I searched at the time and everything else. So, but at that time, yeah, as I was saying, I apologize. As I was saying, I don't want people thinking that because the homicide unit has the case, that means Kaylene is deceased.
Mm-hmm.
We, at this point, this is how I'm going to say it. At this point, we don't know. But at this point, I do want to say there is 99% probability, and that's coming from myself, and that's also coming from Allegheny County, that Kaylene is not alive anymore. And I say 99% because we don't know until we find Kaylene.
Mm-hmm.
But I do say that in the summertime, with one of the areas that I found for the police, I do want to say evidence was gathered, and there was forensics taken on the evidence that was gathered. Due to that still investigated, I'm not going to say what evidence at this time was gathered.
Okay. On that, you know, with what you said you've given to police, you've actually done your own searches, and of course the listeners have heard you have all these health problems and everything. You've actually been gone on a dive in the Allegheny River.
Yes, I personally went on 3 dives. At the time, we were supposed to have a friend of mine got me a dive crew, but Etna Police, this was prior to Allegheny County, the first time I went, prior to Allegheny County having the case, Etna Police refused for them to be allowed to dive. Well, me as a parent, I laughed about that.
Yeah.
Wife, she bought me, at the time, my wife, she bought me all the diving equipment that I needed, all the ropes, everything that I needed. And I went on my first dive. I went by myself. The second one, I realized that I needed help. So I found, of course, I'm not going to say his name, especially I didn't listen to the police. I had a buddy of mine, he's an ex-Marine, he's a diver. He came up from actually Harrisburg, which is 4 hours away from Etna, and he did a dive with me. And then later on, I did another dive also myself in the Allegheny River. The reason why the Allegheny River is because Manno is known to be at the Allegheny River a lot, and he does night fishing. He even posts about it. So I've done 3 dives. The reason why I chose also myself to do the dives is because even though right now I do have a lot of health issues, I did graduate in a fire academy in 2010, and I do actually have river water rescue certified. So I do know what I was doing. That's the only reason why I took it upon myself to, you know what, officers, this has to do with my daughter. I'm going.
Right.
You can tell John Doe, I don't want you to go, and he's going to listen to you. I'm not.
Yeah.
Because you own Allegheny River. Not only that, that's not even your jurisdiction as Sharpsburg's. Not only that, the river itself is Pittsburgh's. So, sorry to say, you can't do anything. I already Googled everything else. It's not illegal to dive in the river, so I did it.
And
not only that,
please.
In 1,000 pictures, I did go on also searches, taking it all. One of them actually, one of the searches, I will say, put me back in the hospital. I got put back in the hospital whenever I fell on that one search after my hand operation because I ripped it back open. But yeah, on one of the searches I did myself, not a lot of people know this, except doctors at the hospital and my wife. I did fall off a barge, and unfortunately, the barge that I fell off of, unfortunately, I didn't fall on the water side. I fell on the other side. And like I said, I had stitches at the time. Of course, yes, I know I'm not supposed to be in the river to begin with because you can get, especially I'm a severe diabetic. But this has to do with my daughter. I didn't care. But yes, I did have to go straight to the hospital because I ripped my arm back open.
Wow. How did you pick those locations out? Can we just take for granted that these are locations between Etna going upstream until you get to like Penn Hills, Fox Chapel area, or what?
I will say exactly how I got these areas. I don't believe in psychics or mediums.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't.
Me neither.
And I will tell you the truth. In May, in the middle of the night, I get a message from a medium forensic scientist. And she goes, Kaylene's with me right now, and said that I had to contact you. Of course, I'm saying, excuse me, what are you talking about? So, of course, I'm thinking this is some type of scam, everything else. And she said, your daughter's with me in spirit. And she said, you are going to be the only one that's going to be able to find her. So now, of course, I got the chills, but now I also have in the back of my head, I don't believe in this crap.
Mm-hmm.
And I still don't. I'll admit I still don't. But that night, of course, to me, it was some type of lead and everything else. So as I finally, she contacted me through social media. Now, at the time, my wife and I, in the middle of the night, we went go searching and everything else. I took multiple pictures. I'll just say her first name, Christina. He was drawing pictures for me. Well, anyway, so we were going along the river for a couple of different reasons why, which alarmed me is, one, Christina's not from the Pittsburgh area. Two, the reason why I chose those areas is because that is along the Allegheny River is in between Etna and Penn Hills.
Right.
You know that, but
yeah.
Some of your listeners might not know that. So,
yeah.
And with Manno always going fishing at the Allegheny River, I thought there's some type of something about this. Maybe not that Kaylene, of course, was with her in spirit, but maybe she was reading up on the story and you felt as though that possibly Kaylene's in the river. Now, what scared me was 5:02 a.m. She drew a picture, and my wife and I were actually heading home at that time so I could recoup and everything else. And we were heading home from the Etna, and we were on 79, Interstate 79. I start crying, and my wife said, "What is wrong?" And I said, "Pull over." And I start crying. I said, "Look at this." I said, "Christina drew this at 5:02. I'll send you these pictures also after we're done." I said, "Christina drew this picture at 5:02. She goes, "Okay." I said, "Look at my picture at 7:13. I took a picture after her drawing. It was an identical picture. So that's where it red flagged me at this spot, which has barges in the river and everything else. That's where I ended up coming up with finalizing I wanted to dive in this area. And not just that, it is 13 blocks from where Manno fishes. So it's all, and what scared me was it was downstream also, which everybody in the world is not stupid. If something's going to be in the water, it's going to go downstream.
Right.
So it's not like this location that she was talking about was upstream from where he's known to be. It was actually downriver. So putting everything together, that's why I chose those locations. Now, two other actual locations are spot of the origins. One of them is the one that I found out. I'm not going to give the exact location, but I will say it's abandoned land. It has multiple abandoned buildings, and it has over 190 acres. Now, the reason why this is considered a hotspot is, I will say, the evidence that was gathered was from there. The police got 4 warrants already to search there, and the police and I are already planning on going back at the end of March, beginning of April, with search crews that have air sniffing dogs. The reason why we chose that time, like the police wanted to go at the end of January, and I told them no. I told them, I sat down with Sergeant Dolphy about it, and I said to him, I said, this is the information I gathered from the search and rescue professionals, the American Mountain Cruise Search and Rescue. I said, they said, since we live in Pennsylvania, wait till the ground thaws so the dogs can smell the scent. So that's where we came up with, we're going to wait until the land is thawed. The reason why I'm saying land is thawed, we're not necessarily 100% saying Kaylene's buried. But I discussed this also with you. I personally, where Manno's phone pinged, whenever he picked up Kaylene, and where his phone pinged at 4:30, I came up with also the location, and I came up with the mathematics that it would have gave him and somebody else, possibly that he called at 2:30, it would have gave them an opportunity to dig a hole for 2 hours and 45 minutes, which for 2 people, that's a big hole. Now, what's scary is if that was, let's say, at that night, January 10th, 2020, and we didn't find out this spot actually until the summer of 2020. That's 8 months of time that everything got to settle and everything else.
Okay. So you have a plan, Jason. What you're saying is you have a plan.
Yes. There's also another spot. This was just brought to my attention by 3 different people. That's why it's credible. This was just brought to my attention, I'm going to say a month or 2 ago. And, of course, anytime I get something, like I said, I have 3 pages with Kaylene. Anytime I get something, I send it right to Allegheny County Police. I send it right to them. And not only, of course, because that's what they do for a living, I investigate things also myself. Because this is now my full-time job, to find my daughter, Kaylene Justice. Now, I was told that after the first time Manno was investigated by Etna police, he burned down one of his camps. Now, I didn't think anything of it and everything else and what have you, but I had 2-3 other people step forward, say the same thing, and said that Manno bragged about it, which I will send you that material also. I will be keeping their names out of it. So now that is, of course, being investigated. And, of course, my 17-year-old, she wanted to know the location because she wanted to go. Me graduating from the academy, fire academy, like I told her, you can't, and I'm not going to tell you the location. I said, because especially you not knowing what you're doing, she the people would just, of course, go in this location and, let's say, look for my daughter's purse. Like I was talking to the police about, and just go right into the burn and everything, the ashes, everything else. You can't do that. Like I was explaining to Sergeant Dolphy, and he even agreed, you don't look for the purse because the purse can obviously turn to dust, ashes. You look for, like, the buckle on my daughter's purse. You're looking for different evidence in a fire than you would anywhere else. And I tried explaining that to my daughter, and of course, Haley is as thick-headed as I am, and as thick-headed as Kaylene was. So that's why I said, I ain't going to tell you where this location is, bottom line.
Okay.
I said, you should be mad at me. I said, but you'll thank me one day, because thank God, not thank God, the wrong choice of words, but Haley, she's very intelligent, very book smart, my 17-year-old, and she's very career-oriented, and she always wanted to do fashion in life and stuff like that, but through all of this, she ended up changing that she wanted to go for forensic science so she can help others, and she already got accepted in multiple colleges, and she, right now, I'm not going to say she completely chose, but she chose YSU, and this is also pushing this whole situation is also pushed by 17-year-old that we also now want to help others so they don't have to go through what we went through.
Right. Of course.
We want to let others know who's there and who actually isn't. I mean, I'm not myself in other, because I became a missing persons advocate since then, of course, and myself and a lot of other advocates that I'm friends with, and I talk on a daily basis, and we work cases together through the internet and everything, and we're trying to pass a bill. I don't blame officers. I don't blame, like I said, and I've already even said it, I don't blame Officer Straw from Etna. I don't. He's a patrol officer. He can't go in every day at work saying, okay, this is my case. No, he's in a police car to some people with tickets and stuff. I don't blame officers. I blame the whole system. There needs to be laws to change. There is over 600,000 missing persons a year. Yes, granted, over 90% is found within the first 24 hours. But with all the rest, and like myself, whenever you hear about missing people, you don't think too much of it. You say, oh, I feel bad. But whenever you do have a missing child, it's the biggest nightmare in the world.
Right.
And you want people to know, yes, police stations and dismissing cases not their priority. You want it to be. You believe and wish it to be. You fight for it to be, but it can't be. Like, for instance, Allegheny County Homicide Unit has my daughter's case. Ever since they have my daughter's case and everything else, look, they're a county department. You know how many homicides a week that they have to investigate? That they have a body?
Right.
So I'm not blaming law enforcement. I stand behind law enforcement 100%. I really do. Not crooked, like I'm not saying the chief of police and Etna's crooked, but I'm just saying it's very fishy, and I didn't like the situation. And if I'm pointing it out to you, and I'm pointing it out to I'm pointing it out, and I'm hammering your name. If that was me, I'd want to hand it off, saying I don't want to deal with him anymore. You know what I mean?
I do.
Why wait till a state senator said and had one of their officers come to your station? Why wait till that day? I was hammering you, your how you are as a person, socially and publicly. Right then and there, I would have been like, I don't want to have to deal with this. Here, I'll give it to the station that has the unit for missing persons. Like I was saying in the past with you, the reason why homicide unit told me they have the case is not because 100% Kaylene's deceased. It's because they're the ones that got the case and they have the resources for missing people. That's what I was told back in June. Of course, now in law enforcement's eyes, and unfortunately our eyes, is unfortunately we are now handling it as a homicide. That's why now, instead of just focusing on trying to find Kaylene, now in forever until we do, now it's to find that piece of evidence you need to prosecution.
Do you have a website or Facebook page set up for Kaylene's disappearance?
Yes. I have 3 pages specifically for Kaylene's disappearance. I have 1 group, and then I have 2 Facebook pages in honor of Kaylene to help other missing people.
All right, say them all. Give them the titles of all of them right now.
Okay, the new group is Missing Kaylene Oehling. It's a group.
Okay.
Kaylene's main page is Missing Kaylene Oehling 2020.
Okay.
Kaylene's follow-up page is Voice of Missing Kaylene.
Okay.
I did a newer page after the vigil. It's called Precious Kaylene Oehling.
I've seen all of these. Yes. Okay.
Now, the 2 groups I have in honor of Kaylene to help others, which I have 5 cases as we speak. It is, the main group is called Help for the Missing.
Familiar with that one? Yes.
And the newer group that I made is, it's National Voices of the Missing, I believe.
Okay.
Oh, wow. I apologize. I forget the actual name. But I have basically on all my pages, I have on the cover photo of all the pages, actually.
Okay. All right. That's quite a few pages. I think that's the most Facebook pages we've ever had on for an episode of Unfound. But I can assure you that we will link to all of them before people hear our voices on this coming Friday. Jason, please.
Of Kaylene, there are more pages and groups of Kaylene from my ex-brother-in-law, Paul. I do know he has a page. I don't know any of the names. I'm not a part of those pages. But these are just the pages I run. But there are more pages out there. Basically, if you Google Missing Kaylene Oehling, a lot of stuff will come up.
Yeah. Okay. Jason, any final words before we complete this interview?
Kaylene, if you can hear us, hear our cries, please help us find you. We love and we miss you. And we're not going to stop until we find you.
Jason, I appreciate you being on this episode of Unfound.
Thank you for having me and being able to be Kaylene's voice.
You're welcome. And that was my interview with Jason Oling, father of Kaylene Oehling. I thank him for joining me and all of you on the program. As I've done many times so far this year, there is now a video on Unfound's YouTube channel concerning Kaylene's disappearance. Since I am from the Pittsburgh area, I know the towns and places Jason mentioned. However, I am sure most of you are not. Also, Jason provided some screenshots and video of many of the points he made during the interview. You can find these at theunfoundpodcast.com. Probably the most compelling item of those is the video in which you can definitely hear Michael Manno say that Kaylene is sleeping with the fishes. And that video kind of encapsulates my thoughts for this summation. Unlike all of the disappearances covered so far on Unfound in 2021, TJ Murray, Patty Dudek, Ben Archer, Noah Davis, Jake Lachelet, and Sky Burnley, there are a lot fewer choices for Kaylene's. As you can tell, Jason has one theory and one theory only. And I can't necessarily disagree with him, even though we don't do theories on these episodes. But given that Michael Manno has told vague and conflicting stories, I can see why Jason thinks what he does. But to go back to the theme of this episode, although we humans are much more intelligent than animals of the wild, those animals know who their enemies are. They respect their capabilities. Water buffalo don't hang out with crocodiles. Gazelle don't lie down with leopards. Elephants, even despite their size, run in packs to deter predators. Whereas we humans, as we've learned on this program over the last 4.5 years, we are not quite as aware as other animals. Sometimes our greatest predators are the people living under our own roofs with us. Why don't we realize it? Probably due to our ego and vanity. Two things no other animals possess. Remember, the 7 deadly sins are not just about how we use them to hurt other people. They are also about how those sins hurt ourselves. So even though you may look at Kaylene and think, how naive could she be? Hanging out with that type of guy, posting about that crime Manno allegedly committed, then going to see him in the middle of the night to get back stolen jewelry. What was she thinking? Well, we all have that inside of us. Maybe not to this degree, but we all allow our weaknesses and flaws to put us in compromising positions. And yes, sometimes in danger. The only good news? Michael Manno is a human too. His rap sheet and the items posted on Unfound's website show he also has an ego and pride and vanity. I guess we'll get to see how much he likes being the prey. I'll leave the theorizing up to you. And that's the program. If you found it informative, please go to the app that you use to listen to Unfound and give this podcast a nice review. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've been listening to Unfound.